trip was because we found that while the H2 program, and it was H2B at that time, is designed to bring in workers, only workers, what was happening was that a lot of companies were filing for U.S. corporation, turning around and bonding themselves and then bringing their own equipment into Maine. And then whenever they got done working in Maine, they actually got unemployment on top of it. So we put the law into place on the Labor Committee in 2005 that said, okay, you want to have foreign labor in the H2B program, show us that you have the equipment that you're asking for the workers for. I mean, it would seem only appropriate that if you wanted, like I said, before, if you wanted a truck driver, you should own a truck. But what it seemed to be happening was people didn't have equipment and they were applying for workers, and whenever a logger would go to accept that job or apply for that job, he was told, well, no, I need a truck owner-operator. So that guy went away. Well, if it happened that a person that owned a truck went back the next day and said, well, you know, I'll take that job. He said, well, no, I need a truck driver for my own. So we were very frustrated with the hearings, or the hearing from people saying that, look, there's no way that I can get these jobs, and quite honestly, if you're looking for a truck, this is not a program that you're supposed to bring in trucks for, because there's no prevailing wage rate established for that equipment. So we put this law in 2005 that said, okay, just show us that you own the equipment that you're asking for. Nothing says that you can't get the worker, but you need to have the equipment for it. We're going to allow you to have the worker. Quite honestly, that program was not, after that law went into effect, the Department of Labor did nothing with that. If they got actually in last year, whenever we started checking into it more, I think there was only 11 companies out of the 36 at the time that even bothered to file the paperwork, and nothing was, in my opinion, being done with it. So we changed it. We did get Governor Baldacci finally to get the department to start looking at this issue more, and that's probably why, you know, you're hearing now that, oh, well, there's a problem. Well, the law's been on the books since 2005, but it only seems to be a problem since the enforcement started happening. And this law, another thing that you heard about the Department of Labor is they don't have much for enforcement. Well, because of that, we allowed members of conservation, fire wardens to do enforcement, or at least do inspections. Because they're in the woods. On a previous bill, some of the testimony or some of the stuff that I provided you was actually documentation from conservation and from enforcement that they had done on a state law. And that's the type of things that they are allowed to do. So it is worrisome whenever people want to take away the state's ability to do any enforcement, which is what this bill does. It strips that ability for conservation to do this type of inspections, which, you know, makes me wonder why people are worried about doing inspections. And lastly is the unemployment thing, and I can guarantee you that if you speak with Senator Thibodeau and others, when we heard that unemployment, there's $300,000 of unemployment being made up by Maine businessmen for workers that we had no idea if they were actually working back in Canada, but certainly had no ability to be in Maine when they're getting unemployment. I don't think there's anyone on the committee that didn't want to do something to support that. So now you have a law that's going to take away that proof of ownership, which, I mean, we're not supposed to allow equipment to come into Maine anyways. We're going to give back the unemployment. Certainly a policy decision, we can do that. I don't understand why we want to. And then lastly, we want to take away any ability for anyone to do any inspection on this. And I think that Mr. Beardsley spoke about it very well. It's probably the best I heard anyone speak about it, better than I'll ever put it in any terms, is the idea that under this H2 program, there is a clause in there for federalism. the state does have the ability to do some things to make it work better for their state, and one of the very few things that we've gotten out of the U.S. Department of Labor is that they would like us to take a more proactive role in the program. People's comments about getting H2 or going to the feds, I don't think you're going to see that, because Maine is such a small piece of the federal bonded labor program compared to states like California and Texas. I don't think that we're ever going to do any changes federally.
We didn't run the clock on
No.
this, so, and you're going to have plenty of opportunity to advocate before the committee, so I appreciate your
history.
I appreciate that. Are there any questions in the Senate? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.